Welcome to our By the Book YouTube channel. It's an absolute honor today to be talking to the wonderful Orna Ross, who is founder of ALLI, and ALLI is the Alliance for Independent Authors. So I'm really interested to talk to Orna today. Welcome, Orna.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely brilliant to have you here today. So I'm going to jump straight in. I'm really interested to know a bit more about you and I suppose how you started your career as an author. I have done some research on you, but I'm really interested to hear from your side. So you might take us back to that time when you were about 24 and you made this decision and you said to your husband that you wanted to go and earn a living from writing.
Gosh, you really have done your research.
Yeah.
And that's a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So I had done all sorts, as I think lots of writers do. I had done all sorts of things before that. But yeah, like you said, I was on holiday and I just had one of those moments, where you say, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. And at that time, Ireland was not as friendly to writers as it is now. If you said you were going to be a writer, people looked at you like, who does your own think she is? So anyway, my husband was really supportive and I left my job and became an aerobics instructor to kind of, as the, supplement the income kind of thing, and began freelancing for the Irish Independent and various other newspapers and magazines that were there at that time. But really what I wanted to do was write a novel, and I had done at the beginning I did a correspondence course, as they were called back then, pre-digital, in short story writing and article writing, and it was the short story stuff that I really enjoyed. But that time was funny. There used to be fiction magazines before that, and but they had all kind of dried up, and non-fiction was kind of the way to make some money. So yeah, I became a freelance journalist. It was about 10 years into that before I began to take myself seriously in terms of writing that novel, and I finally got down to that. And again, in those days, the only way to publish a novel was to send it off, to publishers or agents, which I duly did and got my share of rejections over and over and over, 54 times to be precise. And then eventually I did get a very nice 2-book deal with Penguin, and that was great at the time. But, I think that kind of publishing story where it's, the publishing contract is the happy ever after kind of thing, is as much of a fairy tale as the Prince Charming kind of thing. So there were creative differences with Penguin. I'm really grateful that I had that experience, and much about it was fantastic, but lots about it wasn't. And so when self-publishing came along, I decided to give it a go, and yeah, that's just kind of history.
Can you tell us a bit more about the creative differences that you faced?
It was really about my vision for the book. So some of the things that I had done, I had, as well as, as I kind of made this transition from journalism into fiction writing, I had begun teaching fiction, and I had a writing school. And then because our writers were getting contracts from publishers and that were absolutely appalling, I kind of became an accidental literary agent for a while and representing them because I was so outraged by the contracts. I learned all about it, came to London, learned all about rights, and kind of took all that back to Dublin. I was living in Dublin at the time. And so when I got my own contract, I was very conscious. I got a good reversion clause. I changed the contract completely. And he said he'd never seen anybody who made so many changes, to ask for so many changes to a contract. But it was because I'd worked as a literary agent and I was hyper kind of careful. So I had a lot of experience, and I had worked in magazines and newspapers and so on. And I would have liked to have been part of the marketing meetings, that would decide where the book was going to be positioned and everything. And I asked for that, and they actually laughed. They thought it was hilarious that the author would want to sit in on a marketing meeting. And I thought, I don't think it's hilarious at all. Anyway, no way, that was not going to be allowed. And as the book started to appear, I was getting more and more unhappy with the branding and the positioning, and they were kind of forcing it into what was then the most popular kind of contemporary fiction, which was chick lit, as they called it then. So the second book was even worse. That was about W.B. Yeats and Maud Gonne, and their names didn't even appear on the cover. So it was all a bit crazy. The front covers had women with their heads invisible, either their faces were invisible or their heads were actually chopped off. And you know, I was writing very much contemporary women's fiction, and I had a very clear idea of where that would slot in the marketplace. And yes, it would have been a slower build, but I felt it would be more productive in the end. And I think that's kind of really how it went. And they did take the books into the bestseller charts. I'm very grateful for that. But there was a price to pay, and I was getting increasingly uncomfortable. So, yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that with us. I suppose the conflict was you were taking a long-term view and they were taking a short-term view.
I think that's an excellent summation of it. And I don't really believe in short-term tactics for fiction, and certainly for the kind of fiction that I write. And I don't think most authors want their publishers to think short term. I think, you know, that whole idea of building over time is the only thing that makes sense for an author. And I do know that some books take off and nobody kind of understands exactly why. We're always hoping and kind of working towards that in some way. But if we're forcing the material into something that doesn't feel right, I don't think it works in the end.
And do you remember then, at what point did you first hear, was it from somebody who mentioned that self-publishing could be an option for you?
Yes, I remember very well. So it was a year where I was not doing any public sort of work at all. I was just writing, because I actually had started writing poetry. I had cancer and I had taken a step back completely. Okay. I also had a sort of you know, one of those periods in life where everything goes a bit crazy. I felt like I was living in a washing machine, and we had decided to move from Dublin to London with our 2 grown-up children, and I was just taking a year out to kind of work out what I wanted to do next. And all my author friends, particularly in the US, were talking about self-publishing. And I thought, well, I'll never do that because I'm a tech idiot. I won't be able. But the more I listened, the more I thought, you know what, I have to give this a go, because on the one side, you had these people these friends of mine who were saying, this is incredible. I'm earning more money than I've ever earned in my life. I can't believe the control. I can do what I like. Nobody can stop me, and all of that appealed to me big time. On the other hand, you had people saying, this is terrible. We're going to drown in a tsunami of crap. It's the worst thing ever. So I knew the only way that I was going to know for sure was to actually do it. But I was scared of the tech because I'm not good technologically. So I decided, I put out a little poetry chapbook, and I thought, well, that's safe. Nobody reads poetry, so I can make as many mistakes as I like and it won't matter. And so that's what I did. And I was absolutely stunned when on Apple and Amazon, the various apples, because I was wide from the start, Kobo, everybody. The book started to sell, and not hugely, but the fact that poetry sold at all beyond, friends and fellow poets was a bit of a, I was just stunned by it. I vended a little meditation book. I was all into meditation at the time, and put that out. That sold as well. So I thought, oh, here, I have to get my rights back in Penguin. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. And then I looked for an association to join, and there wasn't one. So that's what led to ALLI.
That's amazing. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. So it was really because of that you were looking for the thing that didn't exist.
exactly. I'm a big believer in community. I'm a huge believer in authors helping each other and, you know, self-empowerment through group empowerment kind of thing. So yeah, I'm a joiner. I like people when I get away from the writing desk, and I wanted an association to join, but nobody was doing it the way. Again, I was bringing. It was like everything came together, and everything I had done, like all those jobs I had done in the past, even before I started my journalism career, came to bear. It was like everything I'd ever done was a skill I could draw on now, either to publish my own books or to put this community together who could support each other.
That was fantastic. And that was back in 2012.
That's right. Almost 10 years ago. We're coming
I
up
know, you're going to be 10 years next year. Yeah, no, because it's sort of a similar background story to myself, in the sense that I had my book and I thought, okay, what now? Or where do I go? Where can I talk to other authors? Because there is so much to learn, and it's that support network as well.
Absolutely. It's crucial. And, you know, you can learn so much from books and courses and, but the ability to ask other authors, hey, you know, how did you handle this? And get maybe 6 different replies. And then, you know, that just makes such a difference. So, yeah. Another part of our work too is campaigning for, and you know, this continues today. It's changed a bit, but at the beginning, it was very much campaigning to say, you know, self-publishing authors should be treated equally. Books should be judged not by how they were published, but by literally how good is the book. It seems obvious, but it's still not obvious to lots of people. But back at the beginning, it really wasn't. That was a real fight. Our Open Up to Indie Authors campaign, it's still running, but and will continue until there is an absolute level playing field. I don't know when that day will come. And we do other campaigns now. We're involved with the Audible Gate campaign around the, you know, payments not being made to authors. So we've got a campaigning and advocacy kind of wing to ALLI as well. We do some other things too. So obviously education and advice is a huge part of what we do. Yeah, so I think the fact that there was a need for it became obvious very quickly, because it grew out. It was going to be this little kind of thing on the side of my writing and publishing, and it's kind of reversed for a while there. It was very much the big thing. It just grew very quickly and was instantly international, which I loved.
Brilliant.
So yeah, it's been quite a ride.
So how did you go about setting it up?
I wrote to the people I admired most in self-publishing sector and asked them, A, did they think it was needed, and B, what would they like it to do? And then, you know, drew in a team of advisors around us who are still there. People like Joanna Penn and Jane Friedman and Mark Coker and Mark Leslie. And they were just incredibly helpful at the start. Mark, Leslie Lefebvre at that time was with Kobo. Kobo was a very interesting experiment, and lots of different self-publishing services were coming up around that time. So we made contacts with them all, Amazon, Apple, everybody essentially, and just got this big hive mind of advice. And from that, then just set up a website, and it hasn't changed structure in any way since we started. So, and I think that was because there was quite a bit of research went into it before we launched.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, I know when I came across your website, I mean, I just thought it was so comprehensive. Your Facebook group, you're covering everything really, and you're that voice, you know, for independent authors. And you also have a very good watchdog side of the business.
Yes, that's an important part of what we do, is kind of surveying the sector and letting authors know this is a good service, this is a bad service. And we're not afraid to say they're bad, and we're not afraid to call them out. And we're also happy to praise people that other people might be ambivalent about. For example, the obvious one is Amazon. There's a lot of Amazon bashing in the book publishing world generally, and yes, Amazon is not perfect, and certainly at the moment Audible, Amazon ACX is not behaving well with regard to audiobook authors. But you have to weigh that in balance with what they do, and it's an excellent service for authors. I know what it was like not to be able to get your book out there. So, you know, I think having that experience really helps you to see, you know, younger authors coming through now kind of take it a bit for granted, and that's as it should be. And, you know, that's exactly what you would want. But I think the perspective of having gone through the 54 rejections makes you appreciate good tools and good technology, good services. They really allow us to do what we do. However, one of our things that we're kind of death on is exclusivity. We really encourage authors not to be exclusive with Amazon, and kind of say, you know, if you're exclusive with any one self-publishing platform, you're no more independent than if you had an exclusive contract with a publisher. And non-exclusivity is the thing. You know, go as widely as you can into as many formats as you can, across as many territories as you can, even into as many languages as you can. That's the ultimate aim as you go, recognizing that in this moment you're always going to be limited by time, by money, and, you know, other things, but to understand that that is the fundamentals of a good author business.
Okay, to go wide.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you actually said, I was going to actually ask you to elaborate on go wide, but I think you've just answered that.
Okay, sorry, I keep jumping the gun on the question.
No, it's all good. Yeah, and do you think then, I mean, because I suppose one of the things I find is that some authors find it difficult to manage multiple social media accounts and I suppose multiple marketing campaigns. Do you have advice around that in terms of building, you know, we talked earlier on about taking that long-term view. Are there platforms or, you know, whether it be social media or distribution channels that you would prioritize? Do you think it's wise to build on those over time?
Yeah, so I think first thing to do is, exactly as you said, that long-term view. So you don't have to do everything at once. And saying non-exclusive doesn't mean you instantly jump into doing things all over the place, because you'll simply become overwhelmed and collapse and nothing will be done well. I'm a big believer in breaking your year up into quarters, and in each quarter having a campaign for that quarter. And I also have a Go Creative in Publishing kind of program, which is very much about thinking of yourself not just as the maker, the writer, but also you make, you know, social media, you make everything that goes around the writing as well, your book descriptions, you know, all of that is the maker role. Then you've got the manager role, which is kind of looking after your process and your payments and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the marketeer role, which is about marketing in such a way that you get a sale. So there is a kind of marketing that you have to do that is just, you know, being there, your website, your book covers, you know, that kind of basic marketing stuff. But then each quarter to have a campaign where you either really develop some aspect of your marketing or you have an actual promotion campaign for that quarter. And they build on each other over time. So you're not looking too far ahead. But as you kind of have one successful quarter after another, you're getting closer and closer. I also think the second thing is keep it as simple as possible. And I speak as somebody who publishes fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Don't do that if you can avoid it. And, you know, if you can stay within a groove, that's the best thing to do. I recognize that a lot of us can't. We're multi-passionate people. That's fine. But do keep it as simple as possible. I personally have wasted an awful lot of time being over complex, and I've seen a lot of other authors do that too. So if you can let something go, do let it go. Think small, think niche, think micro niche. So really understand your genre, and then the niche within your genre, then the micro niche within your genre, and then mine that channel, do it, finish it, get on top of it, and then start something new. Try not to open a whole load of things all together, because it can really get frustrating and actually can lead to quite severe block, I think, to do it that way.
Such great advice, Orna. I know I'll take something away from that that you've just mentioned. I do have a question from that though. Obviously a lot of authors now are looking to the Q4, I suppose, the very important Christmas market. Can you share with us any advice on that in terms of a campaign looking towards that Q4 campaign?
Yeah, so you want to think about your books as gifts when it comes to Christmas, because people will be buying them for somebody else more than likely. So you probably need to think about doing some kind of premium something. And books are way too cheap, and the amount of profit on each ebook that you sell or whatever is not that high. So get outside the usual way of doing things, and think value, and think about how you can present something in such a way that it doesn't take too much of your time, but does add a lot of value. So what can you give in addition to the book, or how can you present that book in such a way that it becomes something really valuable for somebody, that they can give it to their mom or their sister, their aunt, or their uncle, dad, or whatever, and it makes sense for them, and they will pay for that. Most people have a budget for their family that isn't £10, So we can now do that digitally with NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Did you ever hear such a crazy terrible term? But essentially a digital goodie which is hosted on blockchain. So that is an option. If you've got technologically minded people, you can do it digitally, but more than likely it's going to be something physical, perhaps with an add-on. So think about how much somebody would love to get a book and an interview with the author on a Zoom call, and think about how much somebody would pay for that. People could pay up to £100 or more for that easily, So that's just one idea. But what I'm saying is make it premium and charge for it. Authors can be shy about charging. And just while I'm on that topic also, be aware that on different platforms you can charge more for your books. So Amazon is a very price sensitive platform, but other platforms like Apple and others are not so price sensitive. Think about ways you could collaborate with other authors to create a bundle gift for somebody. And again, where it's a premium product, and you see it as a premium product. I think that's the main thing to think about when you're thinking about the Christmas market. And then make sure you're ready to just get your books out in the normal sort of way for the readers who love to buy at this time.
Have the stock.
Have the stock, absolutely.
Brilliant. And then just another question around that. So say you've got a budget for marketing into Q4 and you have your premium product, might be, I think the collaboration idea is a really good one. Is there any particular marketing tool or platform that you have seen that's particularly effective for authors?
I can't answer that question, unfortunately. I would love to be able to, but I would need to know exactly what your book was, exactly who you're trying to reach, and every answer to practical questions that seem so obvious and sensible like that. The answer is always, it depends. Okay. It depends on the book, depends on the reader, it depends on. I will say that most marketers do not hire a marketing service until you know how to market yourself, until you've learned how to, who's your ideal reader, what are they looking for, what is your value to them, and you've actually managed to sell a book to them, to get them across the line. Until you understand all that A marketing service is likely to take your money and not give you much return. I'm not a huge fan of marketing services in general. We have our database of good services, and our marketing section is not huge, and that's not because there isn't a lot of marketing services out there. It's because there's no other, service in life nearly, and in publishing, where you can say, okay, pay me up front, I don't know how this is going to go, and if it doesn't work out, there's no recompense. So it's really quite difficult to advise around it. Marketing is the second trickiest part of being a writer. Writing is obviously the trickiest of all.
Brilliant. And I suppose the final question then I have for you would be, if we look back then at your career, both obviously as a writer, as you said, of many categories, and founder now of ALLI, what would be the one or two kind of key pieces of advice that you would share with others starting out?
Yes, so I would say, to learn from my mistakes, I would say do what you love right from the start. You don't need to become a journalist in order to become a novelist. If you want to be a novelist, just kind of go straight. So that's on the writing side. And on the publishing side, I would say be aware that, you can have a career in the old way. And the old way of authorship was career. And, that's the way my life was. And that relies on gatekeepers like editors and publishers and agents and all that kind of thing. That's a career. But authorship now has become a business. And that's something very different. And so there are a completely different set of skills needed to sell books to readers than the old way of authorship. So the more, if you want to actually be a successful self-publisher, the more you can come out of thinking of yourself as having a career and moving yourself into thinking, I run a business. And if you have shortfalls on your business skills, getting help and support with those, the more successful you're likely to be.
Brilliant. Orna, such amazing advice. Where can people find out more and connect with you?
Thank you. So the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLI for short, is allianceindependentauthors.org, because we're a non-profit, so it's .org, not .com. And I'm at ornaross.com.
ornaross.com. Orna, absolute pleasure. I will absolutely stay in touch with you. And as I said, I definitely can see, potential future talks, conversations, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Orna.
So much.
Take care. Bye.